Hello again, everybody, and welcome once again to another edition of Playoff Memories. We're rewinding now to take a look at games 3 and 4 of the 1992 Stanley Cup Final. The Penguins and the Blackhawks. The venue shifts to Chicago Stadium after the Penguins had won games 1 and 2 in Pittsburgh. And I am joined by Scotty Bowman, the coach of the Penguins, and also Bryan Trottier. And the two of them, Scotty has 14 Stanley Cup rings, and Bryan Trottier has 7. That's pretty good. So I think that they have a little bit of knowledge and wisdom as to how things ought to go in the Stanley Cup playoffs and how to win in the situation that the Penguins were in as they went into Chicago. Guys, thanks a lot for being on with us. Really appreciate it.
Good to be on.
Great to be here. Thanks, Tags.
We go with game 3 here, and I the first thing that comes to mind is that the Penguins have won the first 2 games. And the stars of the Hawks, the scorers, the top guys, have not been able to put up any numbers. Jeremy Roenick has 1 shot through 2 games. Steve Larmer has 1 point. And so the Penguins have really done the job on keeping their top guys off the board in the first 2 games. And Scotty, you're going into Chicago knowing that the Hawks are going to be loaded for bear in the first period, that you're going to have to weather a bit of a storm, which was the case. What were your thoughts going into that game 3, knowing what the atmosphere would be like at Chicago Stadium?
Well, I think we knew, as you know, the Hawks. I'm not sure how many games they went into the final on a long winning streak, and so did we, of course. And I think pulling out the first game, the way we pulled it out, because we were down in that game at least 2 or 3 goals, and then winning it late. And I mean, we knew that they were a solid team, and I think going into Chicago, like you mentioned, I didn't see that game again. I did see game 4, but I know, I mean, the 1-0 game, Tommy Barrasso gave us that Stanley Cup type of goaltending that most teams have got that have won the cup, and you know, we were a high-powered offensive team for sure, but I think we learned. In the first round, when we played another pretty good team in Washington, that you know, we had to tighten up, and I think that's the memory I have of our team, is that you know, we didn't have as good a regular season as we did the year before, with a lot of different problems. But I thought defensively, you know, a team like ours, we had the puck a lot, but even in that game, you know, they were coming pretty good, and I thought our goaltending, you know, was second to none.
Trots, you guys were outshot and early in that game, 9-4, and Tommy was standing on his head early. Is it, you know, from your experience, did you expect the Hawks to kind of storm you guys in that first period, to kind of take advantage of the craziness of their crowd in Chicago Stadium and so on?
Yeah, they were going to throw the kitchen sink at us, and Scotty did a real great job of preparing us. I mean, it was a fun playoff for a whole bunch of reasons, and you need great goaltending, and you need your special teams, obviously. And but it was really kind of neat to keep their second chances to a minimum, their third chances, like just anything around the net, clear them to the corner. We knew we'd have to weather a bit of a storm, but in transition, I think our team was pretty good. Like Scotty said, high powered, good skill, but we were smart in transition. You were going to jump on opportunities to transition them, and any opportunities we could tack to them, but defense kind of was going to be our forethought, and I thought we were well prepared. I think the guys knew what was coming. It's an intimidating building. I thought they tried to play a little too edgy at times. Even their skill players played a little too edgy at times, but I think they lost a little focus because of that. But you know, you want to kind of weather a storm. You want to be able to get the kind of tending you need to weather that storm, and opportunities to a minimum and transition them as much as possible.
Scotty, the first goal and the only goal of this game was scored at 15:26 of the first period. After you had weathered that storm, you have a face-off in the offensive zone. You have Sean McEachern on the ice instead of Mario, with Stevens and Tocchet. So you have McEachern out there to take the draw. He wins the face-off. Jimmy Pack gets the puck, shoots it to the net. It hits the stick of Stevens. At first, they thought Tocchet got the goal. Then they thought McEachern had the goal. Then they finally gave it to Stevens. But I thought it was interesting that you had Sean McEachern on the ice for the draw and not Mario in that situation. and that was the only goal scored in the game. Mario was on the bench.
Yeah, Mario had such a, I've never seen when I look back and I look at the 91 and 92 playoffs, and I couldn't believe it. I think I figured it out. Mario was getting 2 points a game over those 40 something games that we played, whatever it was, or 35. It was just amazing 2 years, and we did move guys around. I didn't watch as much of the third game. I saw the fourth game was offered on TV here about a month ago, and we had players that could play with each other, and I didn't. I mean, I always tried to keep a lot of players together, but and it seemed that in Chicago, maybe it was something to do with the matchups. I'm not so long ago, but I know I got a kick out of watching who I would put on the ice. But Mario was so dominating in those two playoffs, and of course in those two games. And I do remember. I don't know if you saw it. Maybe they didn't see at the end of the game, but there was an incident. I used to tell him when he played for us later in Detroit, Chelios. I said, "You should have been suspended for life. What you did to Larry." No, it was at the end of the game. Did they show that at all, Paul?
Oh yeah, it was the end of the game with Game 3. Chelios just goes crazy and starts pounding on Larry Murphy.
Who? Because I know the fourth game. The ref. There was a pretty physical game, but not a lot of penalties, I don't think. Andy Van Helmen did the fourth game, I think. I don't know who did the third game, but I remember us thinking that this could be a suspension. But of course, that was back in the 90s, a lot different than it is now. But no, they were always a pretty physical team, and I thought that we didn't take. I don't know how many penalties were in those games, but I know watching the replay of the other game, it was. We did move guys around, and in fact, I was. What I noticed about those games, I don't know if you guys did, but it's so much different than today because you could play players had longer shifts, but it took a long time to drop the puck between stoppages. There was always something going on. I mean, you could, and I was looking at some of those games, and I'd say, well, how's he going to stay on this long? And sure enough, that he could stay on because the shifts were longer. We know that, but the face-offs were much longer between whistles, and the announcers would be talking, and that's a big thing I took out of that era.
Trust. It's funny that Scotty brings that up because there was a little segment where they showed John Davidson had a stopwatch. He said, "Well, today Scotty Bowman was saying that the commercial breaks are too long, so I'm going to time them." And he had a stopwatch down by the bench there, and he said, "Okay, this one's at 48 seconds." They were 30-second spots, and they were taking. Hockey Night in Canada was taking. That's why they went to the TV timeouts later because it was getting out of hand. And I know what you're saying, Scotty. There was a lot of time between face-offs, and I just got to ask you though, Trotz. Sean McEachern played a lot because Joey Mullen had been injured in the Ranger series. And I have a feeling that if Mullen doesn't get hurt, maybe Sean McEachern doesn't get as much of an opportunity to show what he could do. But boy, could he skate. In this Game 3, he was absolutely flying. And that was a big face-off win that led to that goal that made it 1-0.
Well, Sean's a gifted athlete, number one. His hockey skills, we were all impressed with his hockey skills, his hockey, the mental, his approach, his the way he saw the ice. I mean, he raised his game in that series, but he got opportunity. And I think when you're young and you have that kind of enthusiasm, the energy, and obviously we all knew he had skill, but his skating speed, I mean, there's no comparison like in all of our skating when it comes to Sean McEachern. I mean, he's just another level of speed, and he's got that youthful energy, and holy cow, he was just inspiring to the whole group. And guys coming back to the bench, high-fiving the kid. And now he's getting more energy from the bench. It was just really kind of a rolling effect. But Scotty did a masterful job of blending the guys and keeping matchups offset because I think Mike Keenan was trying to do a lot of line matching, and the guys look forward to playing with each other. Like as much as we like playing with certain guys through the game, when there's adjustment, we got so used to it. I got used to it with Al Arbor, but having Scotty do kind of the same thing, just moving guys around lines, and guys were ready for it and responded very positively to it.
Scotty, in game one of this final series in Pittsburgh, Mario Lemieux played 32 minutes.
I didn't know that, but I know he played the last minute because that was a close play. I think you're right. Well, Jaromir Jagr made the big play coming. They still wonder why we didn't get a penalty, but there was when they wouldn't call those kind of penalties. But he came out of the corner and beat a few guys. I know that, and put a backhander that tied the game. And then they got the penalty. Steve Smith got a penalty. I remember that. And later on, I was talking to Steve about it. He didn't think he deserved it, but anyways, they got the penalty. And Mario was on the point in that play, and it was the puck came out, and like if he wouldn't have got the puck, but he got to it, as you know, and scored the winning goal. But I think it was Steve Larmer would have had a breakaway at that time. But yes. That was the big win. But in that 1-0 game we were talking about earlier, that I thought in the third period that they were really when you're only one goal down at home, you can really let things go. And I thought that's what our goaltender did in that series. And like Brian mentioned, we had a lot of depth. Sean was a young player. He was a very good college player. Played with a really good line in college. Whoever scouted him, but he came in. He played a lot of times with Ronnie Francis. I was looking at the matchups, and and I even looked, getting ahead of ourselves. But in the clinching game, the next game, game 4, I was looking. It was but more than 2 minutes to go in the game, and I said, I wonder who he's going to put out now. It's funny when you watch them. And I had Brian at center, Mario played right wing, and Ronnie Francis on left wing. And so I said, my God, there's more than 2 minutes to go. Who's he going to put on for the last minute? And sure enough, there was delays again, and Brian was solid on the faceoffs, and we had a big faceoff in our end late in that, maybe 25, 30 seconds left. We got it back, and I said, we got 2 minutes and 10 seconds out of the same 3 forwards. I don't know if you could do that today, but we when we were that close to winning, I said, I always felt that way in those games, even when I was later on or earlier on in Montreal a couple of times. I said, I want to play my best players. I want to play the ones, especially down in crunch time. But I don't know how many players we used in that 1-0 game, but Chicago Stadium had a lot of atmosphere, and pretty amazing to go into a team and a rink like that, because how many games, Paul, didn't Chicago have an undefeated streak or something going?
Yeah, they had won 11 in a row going into the series, and then by the time you guys won the cup, you had won 11 in a row. So
they lost the 4, but they were 11 before they lost the 4. Wow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they hadn't played a home game in 12 days prior to game 3, because they had played in Edmonton, then they had to go to Pittsburgh for that. So that was their first home game. And the fans were just the atmosphere in that building, Trotz. I mean, I know it was loud on Long Island. It was loud in the Met Center the year before. I'm sure it was always loud in Montreal. There's nothing like Chicago Stadium. Would you guys agree with that?
I was going to ask Brian about something, because I remembered it. You're right. But, we're getting ahead of the games, but, when I didn't know that Eddie Belfour only played 10 minutes in the clinching game, and in came Dominic Hasek. We didn't know who he was. Hasek, I mean, he came in, Keenan took out, I think the score was, it was about 3 goals scored in a half a minute. The score was like 2-2, and after 10 minutes, after that 1-0 game, after 10 minutes in the next game. And what I do recall is we didn't know much about Hasek, because he only played a few games. He played in Indianapolis that year, and to look back at him, and we did score 6 goals that night, but I think 3 on him. But I remember Jaromir at the end of maybe he was on the bench or something. We were getting breakaways, and he didn't say very much in those days, but he said in our room, maybe at the end of the second period, he said, look, we got to win this period, because you don't know this guy. He's a world-class goalie. He was really, preaching to us about how good Hasek was, because they're both from Czechoslovakia. And I don't know if Brian remembers that, but we had all kinds of breakaways the last period of that game, and he was stopping us. We're lucky. I'm not lucky, but it's good that we got out of that series, because you never know with a goalie that's unknown. But Jaromir had mentioned, and being a young player, he was only his second year, and Brian was so experienced, and we know Yags with how much ability he has. But I thought Brian really helped everybody, helped Jaromir, because he's a young guy coming into a star-studded team, and he's only 18, and he's got so much energy, and maybe we didn't play him all the time. Bob Johnson had him the first year, and then the second year, I mean, what a player he became. But do you remember, Brian, that him yelling about Hasek and how good he could be?
When they made that goalie change, Yarmer just looked at me, goes, "Uh-oh, he's going to be the best goalie in the world, and got to face this guy now." I said, "Well, just say something at the end of the period to the guys, let them know, because we don't know a lot about this guy." And Yarmer sounded like he was raving about a fellow countryman, and I had to kind of like ad lib to it, guys. He's letting us know this goalie's good, and he had that popping style, and of course he was a little unorthodox. And Yarmer told us all that, and he Brian reemphasized, and it was really good, because Joey Mullen obviously, but Ronnie Francis was always good, and that Scotty. He's a very calm, composed guy, speaks very conscientiously. Mario can log ice. But in this little format that we have here, guys, I've got Scotty with his memory. I've got you, Staggy, with your stats. What the heck am I doing here? I'm the ad lib. This is great. But Scotty, that's a great point, because Hasek came in and we did get a couple goals on him, but he made a heck of a lot of great saves. And you're right, a goaltender in a series can steal it. And that building is obviously the old Chicago Stadium with the organ and everything. I think our guys were focused, and we had a good crew of guys, like you said, that were just very composed, had some good experience. We'd won the year before, so we had that confidence. We kind of got in their grill a little bit, and in their head and their confidence. They were desperate, but also, kind of a team that, Chelios and Roenick and that crew were like, oh my God, we don't want to give them any life, because, they might run with it. But goaltending can always change things. But it was a good point by you with Jaromir and Hasek, because Jaromir looked at me and goes, uh-oh, he's going to be the best goalie in the world. And the Dominator came alive. Holy cow.
Yeah, because Eddie Belfour was a good goalie. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame goalie, I guess, I think, I'm pretty sure. And he, to win, like you said, Staggy, you win 11 games in a row in the playoffs. And I think that, that transpired into our team is when you have a team like ours, I've always felt that Tommy never maybe that happens to most teams when you have a lot of scoring. The goaltender has to make saves at the right time, and even the first year the cup was won, two terrific seasons. And you need the goaltending. And Belfour, when I didn't know Hasek at all, and when he went out of there at the end of the 10-minute mark, I said, well, at least we're getting rid of him. I didn't know he coming in. Hasek, nobody heard about him, but boy, what a goalie he was eventually. So, but our team could score. Mario was in that game. I mean, watching both games again, and I remember watching him from the bench, and it's amazing how a non-hockey fan could show up and watch a hockey game, and it wouldn't be much to pick out Mario. I mean, he was so possessed in the playoffs those two seasons, and I don't think anybody maybe give him the credit, the fact that Mario didn't practice all the time like everybody with his various ailments, and he nursed that back, and he had the cancer scare and everything, and I think that it's amazing how he could tune it in to a big game, and those two games were huge games to try to get the second cup.
Trotz, you're 35 years old in this series, and you're getting a second opportunity Actually a third if you count 91, but it's your second stint here with the Stanley Cup championship team. And clearly you had accepted your role, and I really enjoyed watching Scotty using you in situations where you could win a draw, where you dump the puck. He knew that you were going to make the right play when your team was up. And it was classic example was that in Game 4, after all the scoring and everything, the fact of the matter is you go to the third period, it's 4-4. Really, it's still on even terms. You got to win the third period. You get the lead, and I'm watching you winning draws. I'm watching you dump the puck. I'm watching you get into the neutral zone. It's almost looking like you're playing the trap. I mean, you just really had a feel for how to shut a game down at that point.
Well, Staggy, I got a question for Scotty, because when remember, Scotty, it was late in the season, probably February, March, and we were a few games out of the playoffs. We were kind of holding on and looking like we're going to make the playoffs and not be in the playoffs. And I come into your office and I said, Scotty, I think I play a little more again. I can contribute a little bit more offensively. He goes, Bryan, when we get in the playoffs, I'm going to play your legs off. And you did.
Yeah.
And it really was, I think, a testament to honesty and I always love that about you, is like the fact that you kind of you held everybody accountable. You're a master commander behind the bench. But
thanks.
When it comes to talking,
I think another one, Paul, is it's amazing when you think about the two seasons were so different, but the trade that brought Ronnie Francis and Ulf Samuelsson the first year, and it's always tough when you trade when you're doing pretty well and you make trades. There's a gamble there, and then the second year, because the players we traded were not, they were good players, and if you think about the second trade too, Craig, I know the first year I wasn't coaching, and he wanted to upgrade the defense, and they did a lot of amazing things, and you would know, Paul. I think we traded two defensemen for two defensemen because I had gone to see Larry Murphy. Too bad Murphy wasn't on the call, but I went and see Larry play for Minnesota. And then I remembered because Craig was always, if he made a trade, he'd say, go and watch this player for a couple of weeks. And I went to see Larry play, and he was playing in maybe a second, third pairing. And I remember talking to Pierre Paget about him. He had coached him, I think, before that. I don't think he was coaching when we made the trade, but I knew Pierre Paget, and I said, and he said, well, here's what he said about him. Oh no, he said Larry would be fine in a third pairing. He said in the third pairing, and when we made that trade, who came over with who came over? It
was Larry Murphy and Peter Taglianetti as well.
And then we traded
Chris Dahlquist and Jim Johnson.
Yeah, so that's an unusual trade, but I think the trade to get Rick Tocchet, that was another trade when you think about it. We had I think Frank Peter Ansel wasn't there, but we got Ken Reggett, but we ended up, that was a key trade to get Shell Samuelsson, and I noticed him in those two Chicago games, his reach and his tenacity, and they tried to bang him around, but he just bounced off of them, and getting he and Rick Tocchet, and if you look at Rick's record down the stretch and in the playoffs, and that saying about he keeps the flies off other players, and we not that we couldn't do it ourselves, but I would really think those two trades just were they both near the deadline, or I don't remember that as much.
Yeah, well the Murphy trade was made on December 11th of 1990, and then the Alfie Grant Jennings Ron Francis trade, of course, was made on March 4th of 91. And then, the Tocchet deal was made before the deadline, a little earlier. Yeah. We were able to get Tocchet and Reggett and Shell Samuelsson.
No, so the team changed quite a bit, and when you get changes on a team, but the changes they made those teams so strong, and to have the center ice that we had, and we had a good sized team. I mean, when you look at guys like Troy Loney. And we had a lot of good sized guys, Kevin Stevens in those playoff years. I mean, where you're going to get a player that. And right away, even in that fourth game, I was anxious to see the very first shift of the game when as soon as the puck was dropped, and within 20 seconds, he put a check on Chris Chelios right inside their blue line. I mean, he rocked Chris, and Chris is a really stand-up type of guy. And Kevin, not notable for his physical play, but he was so strong, and as a combination when Mario and he got together, it was pretty impossible to stop him.
Sure was. When I go to so you win game 3, I'm going to go to just to kind of focus a little bit more directly on game 4 for a second here, because the Hawks had gone in the total round of 4 games, the Hawks were, I think, 1 for 15 on the power play. So your penalty killing was tremendous throughout this series. But you get into this 4th game, and Keenan's now, there's a lot of talk about how the Hawks aren't scoring. They're focused too much on the Penguins. They're too worried about what the Penguins are doing instead of playing their game. And their D aren't that involved in the rush. They're more of a dump and chase team where they pinch their D real heavily, and they kind of grind, try to get you on the forecheck. And they're not generating enough offense. All of a sudden, that changes, and it's a crazy start to this game. You mentioned ball 4 coming out, 2-2. But Dirk Graham gets a hat trick. And it's just, if you remember, it was Dirk Graham 3, the Penguins 3 at the end of one period. But what changed, Trotz? Do you think, with the way the Hawks were playing, that suddenly made them, open up and be able to start to generate goals?
I believe that they were trying to play too physical against us. They were trying to play that edgy game, and they had Peluso and
Stu Grimson.
Grimson.
Yeah.
I thought they were just trying to be too aggressive, and when they started playing that little fire wagon hockey again, I think that's what opened it up for them a little bit. And we didn't mind that fire wagon hockey a little bit, because we had some guys that didn't mind opening it up a little bit too. Some good skaters, like Scotty said, Kevin Stevens. You got he's a power forward. You got McEachern, who's got a good speed. I mean, it was kind of fun to see it kind of open up a little bit in that sense. But I thought our guys responded really well. And you talked about Rick Tocchet. Here's a guy's skilled warrior. He's a skilled warrior. Like, this guy can play hockey, but he battles. And I can remember there was a face-off by our bench, and you didn't want to be by our bench to get a face-off, because Rick Tocchet was right in your ear. He's leaning over the bench, and he's screaming at Brian Marchment saying, "You touch another one of our players, I'll come and hunt you down in the summertime. I'll find out where you live." And I look at Tocchet and I go, "Really, Tocchet?" He goes, "I have no clue where he lives, but I'll find out. I just want to get in." And that's just kind of the kind of the fun of the intensity, and you get the guys that get fired up. It was really interesting to see that whole dynamic happen.
It's funny because I also saw Tocchet go by the bench. Chelios was acting up, and Tocchet went by and said something to Keenan, because those two had, of course, been together in Philly. And I think he said something to Keenan like, he said, "I'm coming after your guys." I don't doubt that for a second. It was
Staggy, wasn't there some? I'm trying to remember what happened, but wasn't there a controversy about Roenick getting it?
Yeah.
Was it getting an injury and then putting a cast? When did that happen? That injury?
Well, he had hurt his thumb, and at the end of game 1, he didn't play Chelios or Roenick for the last 10 minutes. He played him only like 2 minutes. I don't know what he was thinking. It was like he was playing head games with Roenick and Chelios, but he then said that Roenick had hurt his thumb, and he put a cast on him, and he made a big deal in a press conference about it. Thought how these guys are slashing our guys, and Roenick's hurt because they're head hunting all over the ice. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Terry Murphy, he's not on this call, but let me tell you something. You mentioned it earlier. Chelios was pounding away at him in game 3, and he picked up with that in game 4. In the first period of game 4, he elbowed him in the back of the head, and Murph was down for a long time. He stayed in the game, but I mean, Chelios was just really, really wound up. I don't know what had gotten into him, but the game becomes 4-3 early in the second period. Tocchet scores 58 seconds in the second period. And I have to tell you this, guys. I texted Mario at one point watching this game a while ago, and Mario sent back, "I could have had 9 points." And I'll tell you what, if you watch this game, he could have had 15 points. I'm not kidding. He had he had 3 breakaways that Hasek stopped.
That's right.
You know, and it just was unreal. Every play, Trotz, so they went up the ice. Stevens, Lemieux, and Tocchet, they were making great plays and getting opportunities. But it was just a wild offensive game that you just had no idea what was going to happen, right?
Staggy, there was one shift. I think it was the third period. I'm pretty sure it was. I mean, we might have been we might have taken the lead because we were up 6-4. Mario took the puck and he went around and he couldn't move the puck. It was in their end. He took around the net, brought it around up near the blue line, back down again. And within about a minute or two later, Jaromir Jagr got the puck. He did the same thing. Like he just kept, we must have killed 25 seconds, you know, because, and I think, you know, when people looked at Chicago, like I was looking at their lineup the other day, and you know, Steve Larmer and Roenick and even Brent Sutter, these are players that, while they're not in the Hall of Fame, they're right on the border, you know, and Brian would know Brent because they played together, you know, with the Islanders. They were such a strong, they had the center ice, like you don't win it if you don't have center ice, and that's what we had. But I thought that team was underrated, like you said, you know, and that was quite a thing to go into their building because, you know, when I looked at the way our guys did a great job on Roenick and Larmer, these guys were I mean, they're productive players. They could score.
And Tross, there's a sequence where you're taking draws against Brent Sutter. What was that like, having played with him on the island at the end of his, well, the end of your, I guess it was the end of the run of the 4 years of winning the Cup on Long Island. Towards the end of that, he joined the team as a young player with his brothers.
Oh, there's not one of the Sutters who's not a competitor, and they're the highest level competitor. And from Brian, I played with Brian in Lethbridge, and Dwayne, you know, I played against Darryl, and you look at every one of the guys, Ron Sutter in Philadelphia, every one of them just pride, bear down. It's a 60-minute game, and they don't want to lose. They just don't like to lose. And Brent's like that. But it was really, there was some confrontation with Brent and I through that, because like he loses the pecking order, because like when you talk to the boys, like Brian Senior, and obviously the two twins are Dumb and Dumber, and how they talk to each other, it's really comical. But when they get on the ice, no friends, and I'm not his friend anymore. Like, you are the enemy. And he's telling me, you know, F you, he like bombs away, and I'm loving it. I'm like, all right, this is good. This is going to be a good game. You get in the face off, it's nose to nose, and you know, he's a right-hander, thank goodness. So I can always go to his strength, which I'm pushing pucks over to the winger, to the defenseman. And, you know, it's just, I don't know, I want to say experience or just leverage or whatever, but he's the young bull and I'm the old bull kind of thing. And I'm using my experience against his strengths. And we talked about it a little bit afterwards, and he goes, what is it about you? Don't you want to win the draw? You just tie me up sometimes. I'm like, you know what? It's a young bull against the old bull. Like, I think, you know, I know how bad you want to win it, and I know how bad I don't want to lose it. And I put it into an area where I know you can't do much with it, and I'm hoping my guys can come to it a little bit quicker than your guys. But I think Brent's one of those great competitors. They had, and Scotty's right, they had an underrated team, and it wasn't that they didn't deserve to be there. And we win in 4 games. But you have the kind of goaltending from Tommy Barrasso that Scotty talked about. And you have key players, obviously Mario and Jaromir, Ronnie Francis, doing all. But it was really fun to be such a part of that chemistry, and how, you know, Scotty blended. Obviously, Craig put together the pieces, but it's a blend, isn't it, Scotty? Like, you got the guys want to get a certain amount of ice time to feel good. At the same time, you got to like make sure nobody's overplayed. So it's being the coach back there.
Brian's so right, because, you know, it's only happened very few that you do he was on the four in a row with the Islanders, of course, but to repeat I think to repeat, like, we're fortunate that, you know, I've been on other teams where you try to repeat, but you all of a sudden you get bombed out in the first or second round. But when you have a team like ours that won the first year, and now you got a chance to go to win a second cup, the experience of winning the first time in 91 meant so much when you get into those type of games, like a 4-4 game, even a 1-0 game, game 3, you have that. It's I don't know. It's that inner confidence that we did it before. We can do it again. And of course, when you get past the second one, it's pretty. It takes a lot to knock those type of teams off. And like Brian said, that was a pretty solid team. And even I was thinking when Brian was with the Islanders, with himself and Brent Sutter in his prime, and then the Butch Goring. The center ice that was our strength of our team. I mean, when Craig was able to get Brian to come over from the Islanders. I mean, I read somewhere the other day that Craig added 11 players. Staggy, you would know this. Did the team in 89-90 miss the playoffs? Is that right?
Yes.
Because Bob Johnson, the late Bob Johnson, just to give you a little bit of what Bob was all about. I went I went the same day as Bob. Craig had called me and said, Bob, 2 days before we're having a press conference when he wanted me to come in, and I didn't have to leave Buffalo. And that was a big factor. And I went in and I talked a lot to Bob, and he said, gee, he said, the first thing I got to do, I got to get all the videos of all last year's games. And people never realized that that was the middle of July, I think, somewhere around there. And Bob took all the videos of the game and I remember he was looking at the power plays, and the power play was effective in 89-90 offensively, but they had something like 20 something shorthanded goals. Like, he was really a student of the game. And we're really fortunate. I always felt that team was so fortunate. I mean, the transformation of a team that was pretty good in 89-90, but didn't make the playoffs. And then the combination of making all those changes. And, when he added Brian, and then when we made the trade to get Ronnie Francis, you got your center ice again. And nobody could match up with us. We met some good teams, but Washington was a really good team. And we had to win Game 7 there. But they didn't have the center ice to match up with us, and that to me is a special 2 years for that team. The way it was put together in not in a hurry, but in 11 new players in from one season to the next. Isn't that right, Staggy?
Yep, and Scotty, you got to give Craig Patrick a lot of credit. He did one of the greatest GM jobs in the history of the NHL, really, if you think about it, to get you and Bob and just start rattling off the trades and the moves that he made to build that team over a very short period of time and turn it into a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. It's amazing. And Trotz, you were an important part of that. I mean, I don't think the Penguins, well, obviously, they don't win the Cup without any one of those pieces of that puzzle, but you brought a special, solid demeanor. When I watch you, Trotz, on the bench, it's like you're stone-faced. You show no emotion, and it's like hilarious. You're so calm. You're so calm all the time, no matter what's going on around you, like in the eye of the storm. Were you
That's called experience.
Or was that because you were 35 and you'd won 4 cups already?
No, the fun part about competition is he who is composed most and generates that poise. You look at the Lemieux and the Gretzkys and the Lafleurs. They have a calm intensity about them, and I love that. And that I felt that inside. I felt like, oh, we're in a storm, but boy, do I feel I'm in my comfort zone, and it's really not a problem. Like when other guys panic, you don't. It's just I don't think it's experience. It's kind of like a little something that makes you a little different from some other people. But I liked coming here for a whole bunch of reasons. And Scotty, you'll understand this because when you're in an organization for a long period of time, it's not that you're taken for granted. It's you become a little less appreciated. And obviously, those younger guys coming in, they need ice time. And here to Pittsburgh, the fans, the press, and the coaching staff, and to feel appreciated all over again, it gives you that another sense of energy. And it's been a wonderful place to live and raise a family, and we've enjoyed our time here. But the reflection of Pittsburgh on us is as much as us on Pittsburgh. So yeah, maybe we gave Pittsburgh an identity in hockey, but also they gave us this wonderful sense of appreciation and joy of identity, be a Pittsburgh Penguin. So it's been a win-win. And to kind of reiterate what Scotty's saying here, there's a pride about being a part of that group. And I'm always so proud of our hockey guys, how we conduct ourselves. And we have wonderful guys like Scotty, who's a mentor to us in so many ways. And, you take stuff that you've learned from coaches Al Arbor, Scotty, Bob Johnson, and I use them in life as much as I do in hockey. And it's great. And how we conduct ourselves. So it's a pleasure to be on with you, Scotty. And
Nice seeing you again, Trotz. Yeah.
I'm with you always.
Well, all right, guys. Well, just to close it out, I want to close it with this, Scotty. You come to Pittsburgh. It's just the way things work out. You're reunited with Tom Barrasso. We mentioned Tommy earlier, but I'm telling you, I watched that game 3, one of the greatest goaltending performances you'll ever see in one game. He was unbelievable in a game like that. And then to win 2 cups the way he did, he's not in the Hall of Fame. I think he should be.
Yeah, real close. Yeah, it's the problem is sometimes when you become eligible in that Hall of Fame. I was on the committee for 15 years. I'm not on it anymore, but when you become eligible, a lot depends on the competition of that era, and then all of a sudden you slide away, and then new players come in, and there's a lot now. It's sort of different. So it's a tricky slope to get in there, but you're right. And they look at records, and they'll often look at statistics, but I think you got to look at a contribution that a goalie does to a team, and that's what I always felt with Tommy, is that he was an ultra competitor, and he meant so much to that group. And when you have a high scoring team like we had, and there's times in those games, and I ran through the same thing with Montreal, and I'm sure that Brian did it with Billy Smith. You could have the greatest defensive team or the best team of all, but there's times in games and series and seasons that, hey, the goalie has to come up with a period, maybe not 3 periods all the time, and that's what Tommy did in that. Winning that was a pivotal game, because that team was so close to winning that first game, and here they are back in game 3. If they win game 3, and a momentum of playing 2 nights later, then all of a sudden, the series could be tied, and at that time, home ice. When you get into finals, and Brian will tell you too, home ice is fine, but it's not as good as people think it is. You like it for game 7 maybe, but you can win games in the finals. You don't get that close without trying to really give your best.
And Trotz, just another thing I want to ask you real quickly, if I can, just comment on the fact that these 2 games, 3 and 4, were totally different. And it was a proof of, once again, that the Penguins could win any way you want to play it. Kind of like the way the Islanders were in their heyday. You could win a 2-1 game, you could win a 6-5 game. That said a lot about the character and the kind of players you guys had.
Right on. And I think you said the right word, character, but it was really a reflection of a group of guys had some good discipline, very well prepared. We had confidence in each other, including the guy behind the bench, because without that commander back there that gives you that sense of confidence, that gives you that sense of poise, and we're doing the right things. Okay, a little adjustment here, a little adjustment there. There's lots of stuff that has to happen. That's great. And Scotty, you said it years ago. There's some ingredients about a Stanley Cup champion, a great goaltender. I think your special teams. You got to stay healthy. You can't have injuries to the player. There's a whole bunch of things that have to happen. And you're right. Tommy Barrasso is a sheet of plywood, and he is a Hall of Famer in my mind. And I sat next to the guy, know him individually, and he's an intense guy, and he's a thinker. He's quiet and a little bit misunderstood, but I love Tom Barrasso. If there's a big game, I want Tom Barrasso and Billy Smith to be my goalies, because I've won with these goalies, and I know the kind of goaltenders they are, the people that they are. So, but no, you're 100% right. Character is a big factor, and you have to be able to perform. And the team wants to play a fire wagon game, okay, let's go. And you want to play a tight checking game, okay. You want to play a physical game, no problem. But you also you got to counter that with a little bit of discipline and good focus and the right kind of chemistry and a little bit of coaching skills. I mean, there's some fun things that happen through a playoff, and those two games were just really fun to talk about. Thank you, thanks, Scotty.
Thank you,
guys.
Brian.
Listen, Scotty, you were the guy that brought Tom Barrasso into the league. You drafted him out of Acton Boxborough High School. I remember you telling me. I loved him because he always had the next play ready. He'd catch the puck and move it. That's what he did in these two games, in this series, actually. And just it was cool to see you two reunited. And Scotty, thanks a lot for the memories.
Yeah.
And enjoy the rest of the summer, guys.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks. Bye, Brian.
Stay well, Scotty.
Okay, our thanks to Bryan Trottier and Scotty Bowman, a couple of Hall of Famers who helped the Penguins win a second consecutive Stanley Cup in 1992, that amazing sweep of the Chicago Blackhawks. This is Paul Steigerwald, and we'll talk to you next time.